You know, I've told you some crazy animal stories before, and this one probably tops it all. There was a green frog that walked into the bank one day, walked up to the teller, and noticed that the teller's name tag said Patricia Wack. And walked up to the teller and said, I would like to have a $30,000 loan to go on a vacation. And the teller was, first of all, amazed by a talking frog. Just imagine a talking frog. And so she looked at him and said, well, what's your name? I don't understand. You caught me off guard, a talking frog. What's your name? And he said, the frog said, my name is Kermit Jagger, and it's okay. You can loan me the money because my dad, Mick Jagger, knows the bank manager. So just give me the loan. And she goes, well, first of all, most of the time that we give loans, we ask for collateral. So the frog pulls out this nice little 1-inch pink shiny elephant and shows her that and hands it to her. And he says, go ahead and give me the loan. And she said, well, I'm not really give loans anyway. I'll have to go back and talk to the manager, loan officer, and see about this. So she goes back in the back office and disappears in there and says, I don't know what's going on here, but this frog out there named Kermit Jagger wants to borrow $30,000 for a loan to go on vacation. And says he knows you and everything. And for collateral, he handed me this little elephant to get the loan. And I don't even know what this is. The bank manager looks at her and says, well, that's a knick-knack, paddywhack. Give the frog a loan. His dad's a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, I like it.
Come on, that was good.
It was.
Okay, let's say our statements of truth together, please. I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now. Well, thank you. Well, today I really have a fun, important message, I think, for all of us, and it's perfect timing with the election and everything else that just happened. And the title of it's just Stop. And like you did just a minute ago in meditation, sometimes we just need to stop. You know, today we have a lot of things bombarding, asking for us for our attention. In this information age, it's all wonderful, yet we can't take it all in, but sometimes we try to. But we have to just stop. Because believe it or not, and those of you that are younger, I guess we've only got one younger here, or two, but those of you that are younger, everything on the internet is not true.
Hello.
It is not true, everything on the internet. And regrettably, a little bit different. I mean, not every 100% was back then was true either, but everything you see on television and the news is not true either, regrettably. It just isn't. But a lot of things are pulling for our attention, so we have to learn where the truth is. And everybody in here should know where the truth is. It's in you, it's in me, and it's what we decide to do with that makes a difference, or doesn't, in our life. Because we have the choice to listen to all those things outside of us, some may be true, some may be not, and choose what we're going to act as is truth. But truth is different than facts sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot of facts out there that we get confused for truth. I mean, there's some things that happen in life that are the facts of what happened, but aren't the truth of the situation. You know, somebody, I can't remember who was it talking to me yesterday? Oh, it was somebody, not in the church, and had come to me and asked me some things actually about the election, but that had nothing to do with it. And we were talking, and I was asking what they were expecting from the election. If they were expecting one side or the other to win because it would make them feel good, then why were you putting how you feel or your goodness in somebody else's hands. Whether you won or lost. Whether you feel good about it or not, makes no difference. We have to be able to get in control of the truth of us. That's what we're here to do. Nothing else, really. We're here not to do nothing else but understand the truth that is. And the truth that is the core of you. It's the core of me. And that has nothing to do with what other people do, how an election comes out, or anything else on the outer. It has to do between you and spirit and the universe. It has to do, think of the stars, how they're formed. They don't go and look at, well, you know what, these gases that are getting together out here in the middle of blackness are looking at how these other gases that are already star formed. They're not. They're not looking at that. They know what to do because they are following a divine guidance that all of us can follow. But we have to choose to follow it. We can't just assume that what we're doing is the right thing unless we're going and doing it from guidance that we've received by stopping in meditation or whatever. You don't have to be in a quiet place necessarily, but that's usually where we start to learn how to meditate. But we have to stop and go within and ask for the guidance. I've been using the last few talks I've made here, I've been using some words that we don't usually get to in the Revealing Word. And these two words that I'm going to use today are from the Revealing Word, but they're both 12 powers. The first one, though, is renunciation, and I'm going to use it because it's one that is the old version of elimination that they use now. Release, let go. And we're going to see what it says about what. Good, that's what I asked you to do. Thank you. Really, you got to stop. I can see that. That's funny. Where's the pointer tool on this? And that is funny. Really, you got to stop. That must be one that they don't stop at. That was good too. Okay, that's good. All right, renunciation. Renunciation is a letting go of old thoughts in order that new thoughts may find place in consciousness. Now, we could replace that with new thoughts. We could replace that with truth. Because even though we have the truth within us, sometimes we are deviated from that truth by the way we live life. It's amazing to me. I've known a lot of people, and I know that you have too, and I probably have done it myself, even though I don't like admitting it, is that sometimes as humans, we do something over and over again and expect a different result. I mean, they used to call that an idiot. Or insanity, yeah. We can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. We're going to get the same result. Something has to change in that dynamic for us to get a different result. Most of the time, it's us. So we have a choice. We're going to get rid of, we're going to release the old thoughts or the old way of doing things to come up with a different result, or are we going to just keep playing this game because it's serving us somehow? I don't know. It's an individual question for each of us. Renunciation, though, we go on, and it says, a healthy state of mind is attained when the thinker willingly lets go of the old thoughts and takes on the new. Willingly is the key to this whole thing. In an election, working for a perk, anybody else, doing anything a certain way that you may not want to do it, if we allow those things that we may not agree with, the outcome, to be something that affects us, then we had something that we were projecting on that outcome that we should not have been projecting. You follow me? Yes. We cannot project an outcome by someone else doing something a specific way, even if we're the boss. I had my kids work for me when I had my business, and I have some stubborn kids, and Jesse especially would always want to do. And I've been doing this for many, many years, 20-some years, and Jesse would always want to do something a little bit different. I said, son, you can go ahead and try that, but it's not the fastest, it's not the best, it's not the easiest for you. But you can go and try it. And sure enough, every time it'd take longer, it'd be more of a headache, and it just wouldn't be as easy for him as the way I told him to do it. Yet he did that quite often. And that's okay, I guess. I mean, the job was done. I let him do it that way. Yet was that the easiest and best way for him to do it? No. And you know, even when I was at Unity and we changed some, and this happens, I'm sure you all have experienced this, we switched to some new machinery that was something that was new. Okay, not everybody knew how to do it. But I had made that decision not to blow Unity's money. I had made that decision because if you learn how to use this equipment and use it right, then it's going to make your job easier. More stuff's going to get done. You have less work to do. That's the whole idea behind it. But do you think everybody embraced that? No! And it's okay. Once they found out, though, that it does work better and it makes their life easier, then everybody was cool with it. But for some reason, when we have to change the way we're doing things to get a different result, we look at it sometimes and say, am I willing to change? Am I willing to change? And regrettably, some of the time, we aren't. This whole life is going to be about change for you. I'm sorry. The reason that I'm sorry is because sometimes we get into a comfortable place, and I've been there myself, and we think if we can just stay right here in this lane, if we can just stay right here, it's perfect. It's just so comfortable, I can stay right here and everything's going to be fine. But everything is changing all the time, and it doesn't work that way. We have to continue to change. I don't know if you read, I don't know if it was just this morning or last night, but Warren Buffett had, for many, many years, in fact, all his life before this last year, he has been against internet businesses. Been against them because he wants brick and mortar stuff. Says that's where you make the sales, and he's multi-millionaire because of it. Yeah, billionaire, multi-billionaire because of it. But just recently, he said, you know, the consumer is changing the way they buy stuff. They are going to the internet. So I have to change my thinking to what they're doing. So I'm going to embrace. Now he's selling Walmart stock and buying Amazon stock. He changed. I mean, for an old man to change. That's kind of odd, kind of rare. But we can do it. We have to change sometimes. Renunciation is how we do that. We release it. We release our hold on an old thought. And this is where we come into chemicalization sometimes, so we have to be careful and have to know that something can happen to us, but we have to sometimes release the old thought because it no longer serves us. So renunciation. This is illustrated by the inlet and outlet of a pool of water. Okay? You know what I'm talking about here, or what he's talking about here, is how the fresh water comes in to replace the old stagnant water, and the old stagnant water goes out. It's the same as in a human body. You know, if we get clogged up and don't go to the restroom for a while, it's going to cause us health problems, isn't it? Everybody knows that. Maybe from a little discomfort to a major problem. We can't be clogged up. We have to release some stuff. The center of renunciation, sometimes called elimination, which is the new, what a lot of people like to call it now, release, what Reverend Francis said too, release and let go. In the lower part of the abdomen, carries forward the work of elimination of error thoughts from the mind and waste from the body, kind of what I just talked about. Okay? So that's that. So, we have to release our old thoughts. We have to just stop and think of what is serving us now. And how that's serving us. You know, that old thought could be serving us, but not in a good way. That old thought could be serving us, oh, I'm so sad because I have had all these problems, and I have all these things going wrong with me, and it serves me because I get sympathy from people. Okay? That isn't going to help you. I mean, it helped you for a little bit, not very long. How many people know people, don't raise your hand, but know people that have been on the sympathy trail for a long time? And it's not that we don't love them anymore or any less. It's just that we're tired of their same old story. You know? Not trying to be mean, I'm just saying. We, oh,
You did second out.
cool.
The lace God.
Not trying to be mean about it. What I'm saying, though, is that if we care about somebody, that obviously we do if we gave them sympathy. Hopefully we gave them empathy instead. But if we care about someone, then we don't want to see them on that sympathy trail for a long time, do we? We don't. We want to see them lifted up.
Right.
But you know what? Part of that is us. Believe it or not. They can't base it on us, but part of it is us. Because as long as we do give sympathy, then we are aiding to that. What we can give is empathy. Look, I love you, and I hear your story, but I've heard that story 50 times. How can we help each other, lift each other up? Not trying to be mean. I'm not saying it to you. You know what I'm saying. Oh, wait a second. No, okay. I'm kidding.
Just wait.
I'm kidding. She knows I am. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, pity party. Yeah. Yeah, pity party. Yeah. So there's a lot of words for it. We know how to get up. Okay. So the other part of this is power. Where we're going to place our power. And the power, of course, is another one of the 12 powers. What color is that?
Purple.
Purple. So it's that one right there.
It's for May.
It's for May.
What is your
Francie is
power
my
without
expert 12 power person.
Your throat, your words.
Your throat and your words. Oh boy, that's amazing, isn't it? Power. That's where it is. Your throat, your words, your power. So, what does that tell us? What we're going to have to do, huh? It tells us that we're going to have to watch our thoughts, our words, our actions, and mainly our thoughts. The power. Man's innate control over his thoughts and feelings. Innate, meaning within you. You have it already. So you have this power within you to control your thoughts and your actions and your feelings. Believe it or not, feelings are for me, are a lot tougher. But we do have control over them if we choose to take control over them. A quickening from on high must precede his realization, his or her realization of dominion. Well, yeah, Francis said dominion is the old word for power. Yet I like the word dominion being there because of the fact that dominion is one of those old words that a lot of people, if you study the Bible and stuff, kind of misunderstand. And all it means is we have dominion. You have power over something. And it's true. Whether you want to accept it or not, you have power over your life. You have power over everything around you. You do. You have dominion over everything around you and you. But claiming it is something that is a little bit different. Okay? Sometimes when we claim our dominion over everything, we look at our life and say, that isn't the way I wanted it. But it's easy if we go back to renunciation and say, okay, I don't have to have it that way. I can release that stuff and change it to a new dynamic. I'm going to tell you about that here in a minute. And this is what he uses as a quote from the Bible for power of power. Ye shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. What does that mean? See that? If you go for the far right, that means, you have to receive Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit will come upon you. But that's not true. The Holy Spirit is already in you. You just have to receive it to understand that it is in you. It's in you already. But it does you no good if we live life like, I'm going along with my buddies and breaking into this store because that's what my buddies are doing and I like my buddies, so I'm going to go do that. The Holy Spirit, the power within you, the Christ within you, gives you that feeling in your gut, though, saying, hey, don't do this. Don't do this. But if you've already done it, then you have to, again, claim it and move on from there. We can't undo what we've done in the past, but we can live a different life from this moment on. God is all power, which is omnipotence. Thus, all things are possible with God. Where is that omnipotence? Within you, within each one of us. So, I got a story. Oops, I got a story for you. Some of you, if you've been in old time religion, may have heard this before. But if you haven't, if you've been in Unity a long time, you probably haven't. It was written in 1975, I think, by the guy that was that told the story about to die. But anyway, it's a time. It's about 3 marbles, and that's the title of it. And for me, it's kind of touching because I don't know how many of y'all knew people in your family or knew people at all that lived through the Depression. And this is a time this is a story about Depression times. During the Depression, as you may have read about, and it's funny because Francie and I are watching this new show called Timeless. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's pretty cool. It's about a time machine. They go back, they're in different time areas, and it's so funny because one of the people that go back is a historian, and the other 2 that are going with her are, she knows about everything, and the other 2 going back with her kind of are like, what does that date mean and all this stuff. And it's like, I hope that our young people aren't forgetting what our history is, because remember that old saying, hopefully it doesn't come true anymore, but if you remember the old saying, if you forget the past, then you're doomed to repeat it. And so the Depression, though, was a time when the banks weren't secured, and when a lot of things failed, people were extremely poor. And for my family, that was they were in the Dust Bowl. Part of my family was, and the Dust Bowl was something that was not fun to live through. It was before they knew how to terrace the land and all, and had planted the trees, and all that stuff to stop the wind from just tearing the heck out of the land in the Midwest. And it did. It just tore them up, because when it was dry like we are here, but in the Midwest, if you're dry like this, you have nothing but land. And of course now we have trees and terraces, so it doesn't do it. But if you have just land and it's dry, when that wind comes up, it's all dust. And I mean, you had to put towels in your windows and your door seals and everything just to be able to breathe. Anyway, so this story is about a man a salesman that would go around to different places. He went around all the northwest United States, and when he could, when the weather was right, he'd like to go to this small town in Idaho to sell what he was selling. And one time he was there, and he went during the Depression, and he went into the general store to buy some potatoes for his trip. And so he was buying his potatoes, and Mr. Miller, who owned the place, was sacking them up. And he noticed this boy that was probably around 10 years old over there looking at a bag of snow peas that had just been picked, and fresh peas. And after he's done bagging up his potatoes, he watched how Mr. Miller went over and asked the boy, said, what you doing, Jimmy? And Jimmy said, oh, I'm just admiring these snow peas. And he said, well, would you like to take a bag of them home? And he said, well, I'd like to, but I ain't got no money, so I can't do it. He was pretty ragged, didn't have very many clothes on. And back then, most people were very skinny. And it wasn't by choice. So anyway, the kid was there, and the salesman was sitting there watching Mr. Miller, and Mr. Miller said, well, you got anything to trade for that bag of peas? And the little boy said, no. Said, no, I ain't got nothing, but I got this nice blue marble that I got for you. I could trade for him. And Mr. Miller said, well, let me see that blue marble. And Mr. Miller examined it and said, that's a nice one, all right, Jimmy, but I don't think I'm not very much into blue. I'll tell you what, why don't you take these peas home with you to your mom, and she wasn't feeling too good, but to your mom and your family, and have them, and then when you come back, bring me a nice blue or a nice red one. And so after that conversation, the little boy left, and Mrs. Miller noticed that the salesman was watching the conversation and came over to the salesman and said, you know, Mr. Miller there's three young kids like that in the community that have really nothing and don't have too much of a shot to get anything in the near future. So Mr. Miller does this game with them and says, you know, if you have anything to trade, and usually they'll say a marble, and Mr. Miller will not like that color and want a different one. And then the boys will come back and every time he'll say he doesn't like that color and wants a different one, gives them a bag of whatever fruit or whatever kind of produce that they have available at that time. Well, after that visit, the salesman had got another job and was stationed in different states and didn't go to Idaho, but he made a lot of friends in Idaho while he was there. Many years later, I think it was probably in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, I don't remember which year it was, but the salesman went back to that town in Idaho to visit some friends. And upon that day he arrived, he noticed that the friends told him that Mr. Miller had made his transition. And so they were all wanting to go to the funeral. So they went to the funeral, and the salesman was waiting in line like everybody to give his condolences to Mrs. Miller. And noticed the three boys, there was three young men in front of him that one was in a military uniform, and the other two were in nice suits with nice white shirts, and they were all really good looking and looked like they were really successful. And so when the salesman got to Mrs. Miller, he said, I really appreciated that story and related to her, and she remembered too, obviously, and said, well, let me tell you something. Those three young men that just came by me and went to Mr. Miller's casket were those three young boys. And they had all become successful over the years. And even though we may not have much of anything in this town except that old store, I bet you Mr. Miller right now would think he's the richest man on earth. Because she went over and took the salesman over to Mr. Miller's casket, and underneath his hands were the three shiny marbles, paying back the three shiny red marbles that the boys had said that they were going to give him that he never accepted. It doesn't really matter how we think or how we do things in life other than how we treat each other. I mean, what happens to us, what I mean to say is, it doesn't really matter what happens to us in life, it's how we treat each other. How we treat each other by our words, our actions, and our thoughts. But in order for the words and the actions to be sincere, our thoughts have to be behind them. Mr. Miller, of course, wasn't worried about how much money he was making. He was obviously making nothing on giving that to them when everybody needed money. But nobody had it anyway. But Mr. Miller gave away some of his produce because he was investing in a relationship, in a person that he knew later on down the road would be a success, whether anybody else held that for them or not. Mr. Miller did. And so did Mrs. Miller. She just wasn't the active person doing it. So when we think about how we want to live our life, how we want to see our life be, then we have to act in those ways and talk in those ways. Regrettably, this past election, I've seen a lot of unity people, ministers mainly, as the ones I've talked to, be either happy or not happy about the results. And I'm thinking to myself, what is it you teach on Sunday morning? Since when is our happiness dependent on someone else? Since when is our success dependent on someone else? We may have to cross some bridges, jump some hurdles that we may not want to do, but that has nothing to do with us being a success. Because we can cross those bridges and we can jump those hurdles. You can do it. This is the last week. I don't know why. I'm going to find out this next week. But the GDOT asked me to come in for something on Tuesday. And I'm sitting there thinking, Francie said, well, maybe that's just to get you caught up on something. I said, well, if I would have done what had been planned, if things wouldn't have got behind schedule, then we'd be done with that. So I don't know why they want me to come in, but I'm going to find out. So it's just a hurdle that we have to do, to get crossed, to pass, to go to what we want to get to. It's nothing that's going to stop us, though. We're going to continue on, and we're going to go forward to our destination that we have been guided to go to. Now, if our guidance says something different, then we can change course. But our guidance right now is to go forward. And so that's what we're going to do. So I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. We're going to have a wonderful feast next door. God bless you all.